Get ready to dream. Close your eyes, the story is about to begin. In rural France, Siobhan, a young historian, arrived in the small village of Montreuil-sur-Mer with the goal of investigating ancient local legends about supernatural beings. Fascinated by myths and stories of mystical creatures, Siobhan was determined to uncover the hidden secrets in this picturesque and mysterious region. Montreuil-sur-Mer, with its narrow, winding streets, stone houses, and an atmosphere steeped in old stories, seemed like the perfect setting for her research. On her first morning in the village, Siobhan headed to the small local library, an old building with walls lined with dusty books and forgotten manuscripts. As she browsed the shelves, a particular book caught her attention, a compendium of regional legends that mentioned sightings of werewolves. She was so absorbed in reading that she didn't notice the figure approaching her. "Interested in werewolf stories?" asked a deep, engaging voice. Startled, Siobhan looked up to see a tall, mysterious-looking man with intense eyes and dark hair. He was clearly a foreigner, someone who didn't belong to the village. "Yes, I am," Siobhan replied, trying to hide the slight blush on her face. "I'm a historian, and I'm here to investigate these legends." "My name is Declan," he said, extending his hand. "I can help you. I know some stories you might find interesting." In the days that followed, Declan guided Siobhan around the village, showing her places mentioned in the legends and telling her stories that seemed straight out of fairy tales. With each meeting, Siobhan felt more drawn to this enigmatic man. There was something about Declan that deeply intrigued her, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. One night, as they walked together under the moonlight, Declan suddenly stopped and looked out at the horizon as if listening to something far away. "Do you believe in curses, Siobhan?" he asked, with a voice that mixed sadness and resignation. "Yes, I do," she answered, sensing that something important was about to be revealed. "Then I need to tell you something," Declan said, taking a deep breath. "I'm a werewolf." Siobhan felt the ground fall away beneath her feet. The revelation left her stunned, but at the same time, a strange sense of understanding washed over her. "That's incredible," she said, not quite sure how to react. "It's not incredible," Declan said with a sad smile. "It's a curse. A curse that forces me to live in the shadows, always fearing for my life and the lives of those I love." Despite the initial shock, Siobhan couldn't distance herself from Declan. There was something about him that irresistibly attracted her, something beyond the curse. Over time, the two fell deeply in love. Every moment together was a mix of joy and danger, as Declan's presence in the village began to arouse suspicion among the villagers. One night, while standing by a lake, Declan held Siobhan's hands and looked deeply into her eyes. "Siobhan, are you sure you want to stay by my side? My life isn't easy. There are dangers you can't imagine." "Declan," Siobhan replied firmly, "I've already made my choice. No matter what happens, I'm ready to face anything by your side." From that moment on, Siobhan and Declan knew their destinies were intricately linked. Together, they would face the supernatural challenges and human prejudices that stood in their way. Their love, though tested at every turn, grew stronger with each adversity they overcame. And so, in the small village of Montreuil-sur-Mer, a young historian and a werewolf began a journey that would change their lives forever. In rural France, the atmosphere was thick with tension. It was the first full moon night that Siobhan and Declan would spend together since she had discovered his secret. The young historian, fascinated by legends and myths, had found in the mysterious stranger more than she expected, a man who turned into a werewolf under the light of the moon. That night, under the clear, starry sky, Declan took Siobhan to a clearing in the forest. He knew the transformation was inevitable and wanted her to be safe. "Siobhan, are you sure you want to stay here?" "It's not a pretty sight," he said, with a worried look. "I need to see it, Declan." I need to understand what you go through, she replied, holding his hand tightly. As the full moon rose on the horizon, Declan began to writhe. Bones cracked, skin tore, and he let out screams of pain that echoed through the forest. Siobhan watched, horrified and yet fascinated, as the man she loved transformed into a lupin creature. When the transformation was complete, before her stood a towering werewolf, his eyes still reflecting a glimmer of Declan's humanity. "Declan, I'm here." "I'm with you," Siobhan murmured, trying to calm the beast. Meanwhile, in the village, rumors began to spread. The villagers, suspicious and fearful, whispered about the presence of a werewolf among them. Tension grew, and suspicious glances increasingly turned toward Declan, the stranger no one knew well. In the days that followed, Siobhan delved deeper into her research, determined to find a solution to Declan's curse. It was then, while exploring an old library in the village, that she found a dusty journal. The yellowed pages told stories of a secret society, the Guardians of Purity, who hunted supernatural beings. "Declan, you need to see this," she said, running to him with the journal in hand. Declan read the pages carefully, his eyes narrowing with concern. "This explains the suspicious looks in the village. They're watching us," he said, handing the journal back to Siobhan. "We need to be careful, Siobhan. These people are dangerous." Days turned into weeks, and the presence of the Guardians became more evident. Siobhan and Declan felt the pressure mounting, knowing they could be discovered at any moment. With each full moon, Declan's transformation became an event filled with fear and uncertainty. Siobhan, determined to help, continued her research, searching every corner of the library and questioning the oldest villagers in hopes of finding a clue that could save Declan. One night, while flipping through the old diary, Siobhan found a name that caught her attention, a witch who, according to the records, could break curses. "Declan, this could be our chance," she exclaimed, showing him the page. But Declan, though hopeful, knew that any attempt to find this witch could put Siobhan in even more danger. "We need to be careful, Siobhan. We can't trust anyone," Declan warned. "I know, but we can't give up." "I won't let those guardians destroy us," she replied, determined. As they faced these challenges, the love between Siobhan and Declan only grew. Every moment together was a battle against time and the dangers surrounding them. The village, increasingly suspicious, became a minefield of watchful eyes and whispered rumors. The discovery of the diary and the growing threat of the Guardians put Siobhan and Declan at a crossroads. They knew they had to find a solution before it was too late. With heavy hearts, but strengthened by the love they shared, they prepared to face the dark secrets the village held and the secret society that relentlessly hunted those like Declan. The secret society, known as the Guardians of Purity, began investigating Declan with growing intensity. Since the rumors about a werewolf in the village spread, this organization, made up of individuals fiercely dedicated to eradicating supernatural beings, had turned its attention to the mysterious stranger. Siobhan, guided by her instincts and the old diary she had found, knew they would soon be in imminent danger. One night, as Siobhan and Declan discussed their next steps, they heard an unexpected sound coming from the shadows of the trees. A tall, elegant man, with an air of sophistication and an unsettling presence, emerged from the darkness. His name was Armand, a vampire who was also being hunted by the Guardians. "I'm not your enemy," Armand said in a smooth but firm voice. "I've come to offer my help. I know what you're up against." Declan, a mix of distrust and curiosity, raised an eyebrow. "Why should we trust you, vampire?" Armand took a step forward, letting the moonlight reveal his pale features and deeply expressive eyes. "Because we're on the same side. The Guardians don't distinguish between werewolves and vampires. To them, we're all abominations to be eradicated." Siobhan, sensing the sincerity in Armand's words, intervened. "If we're going to work together, We need a plan. And fast. They're getting closer. That same night, the three gathered in Declan's cabin to devise a strategy. Armand shared his past encounters with the Guardians and explained how they operated. The information was vital, but as they discussed the details, the sound of breaking branches outside alerted them. It was too late. The Guardians had found them. "Run!" shouted Armand as the cabin door was kicked in by men armed with torches and silver weapons. Declan, feeling the urgency of the situation, grabbed Siobhan by the hand. "We have to get out of here now." He pulled her through the back door, but in the chaos, they were separated. Declan, in his partially transformed werewolf form, fought off the attackers, trying to clear a path for Siobhan to escape. "Declan!" Siobhan screamed, but he was already locked in a fierce battle. Armand, using his supernatural speed, appeared beside Siobhan. "We don't have time. We need to go." Reluctantly, but understanding the gravity of the situation, Siobhan followed Armand to the safety of the forest. As they ran, they could hear the sounds of fighting and the shouts of the Guardians. Siobhan's heart was heavy with worry for Declan, but she knew going back would be suicide. Hours later, when the moon was high in the sky, they stopped to rest. Armand looked at Siobhan, noticing the anguish in her eyes. "He will survive. He's a fighter. But we need to think about what to do next." Siobhan nodded, trying to hold back her tears. "I won't give up on him. We'll find a way to end this." Armand placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "And we will. But first, we have to regroup and come up with a new plan. We're not alone in this fight." That night, as the flames of the Guardians' torches still flickered in the distance, Siobhan vowed to do everything in her power to save Declan and put an end to the Guardians' threat once and for all. With Armand by her side, she knew they had a chance, no matter how dangerous it was. Siobhan was in a desperate situation after the attack by the Guardians of Purity. The young historian had been captured and was being brutally interrogated. The Guardians, a fanatical group dedicated to eradicating supernatural beings, wanted information about Declan's whereabouts, the werewolf who had become the center of their attention. Siobhan, however, resisted bravely, determined to protect the man she loved. "You won't make me talk," she whispered through gritted teeth as one of the Guardians gripped her arm tightly. "You will tell us where he is, or you will suffer the consequences," replied the leader of the Guardians, a cold-eyed man named Henri. Before Henri could continue with his threats, a loud crash echoed through the room. Armand, the vampire who had become an ally of Siobhan and Declan, burst through the door, knocking down the Guardians with impressive force. He quickly approached Siobhan, freeing her from the restraints. "Come on, we don't have much time," said Armand, pulling Siobhan by the hand. The two escaped through the dark streets of the village, moving swiftly to avoid the patrols. Armand, with his heightened vampire senses, managed to guide them to the forest where Declan was hiding. They found him near a clearing, his eyes glowing with alertness. "Siobhan!" Declan exclaimed, rushing to embrace her. "I was so worried." "I'm fine, thanks to Armand," she replied, relieved to be back by Declan's side. The three sat down to discuss their next step. Siobhan revealed her discovery that there might be a cure for Declan's werewolf curse. She had found clues in an old diary suggesting that her own lineage held the key to the cure. "I found a diary," Siobhan began, her eyes shining with hope. "It talks about an ancient magic that can reverse the curse. And it seems like my family might be connected to this." Declan looked at her with a mix of hope and skepticism. "Do you really think this could work?" "I don't know, but we have to try. We can't keep running forever," she replied, determined. Armand, despite his cynical nature, seemed intrigued. "If there's a chance to end this, it's worth looking into." So they decided to search for more information about Siobhan's lineage. During their journey, Siobhan began to recall stories told by her grandmother, which always seemed more than just fairy tales. She realized that her grandmother had an old grimoire full of spells and secrets. "I remember my grandmother talking about a grimoire," Siobhan said as they walked through the forest. "She used to say our family had a special connection to magic." "This might be our only hope," Declan replied, holding her hand tightly. "Let's find that grimoire and see what we can do." When they arrived at Siobhan's grandmother's old house, they began searching through the old belongings. They found the grimoire hidden in a chest in the attic. The pages were worn with time, but still readable. As they flipped through the book, they found a spell that could break the werewolf curse, but it required a great sacrifice. "This spell says we need a blood sacrifice for it to work," Siobhan said, with a lump in her throat. "I'm not going to let you hurt yourself because of me," Declan declared, firmly. "Declan, if this is what we need to do to be together, then I'm willing to take the risk," she replied, tears in her eyes. Armand, watching the couple, decided to step in. "Let's think of a strategy. We can't rush into this. We need to be prepared for anything that might happen." With Armand's help, Siobhan and Declan began planning how to perform this spell. They knew that the Guardians of Purity were on their trail, but they were determined to fight for their love and their lives. The journey to cure Declan's curse was just beginning, and the challenges they would face would be just another test of the strength of their bond. Siobhan rummaged through the old chests in her grandmother's attic, feeling the dust and the scent of age would fill the air. Every item she found seemed to tell a story, but what she was searching for was something deeper, a connection to her past and possibly a solution to Declan's curse. Her trembling hands finally found an old grimoire, its pages yellowed with time, filled with detailed notes and arcane symbols. This might be what we're looking for," Siobhan murmured to herself as she flipped through the pages. Her eyes widened as she found a spell that promised to break curses, but with a severe warning about the sacrifices needed. Later that night, around a small campfire in the forest, Siobhan shared her discovery with Declan. He looked at her with a mix of hope and apprehension. "So, what does the spell say?" he asked, trying to hide the anxiety in his voice. "It's a powerful spell," Siobhan began, "but it requires a great sacrifice. We need the blood of a direct descendant of the witch who created the curse, which means I would have to sacrifice part of myself." Declan immediately stood up, his expression becoming stern. "We can't do this, Siobhan. I can't let you put yourself in that kind of danger. It's already risky enough for us to be together." Siobhan took Declan's hand, her eyes filled with determination. "Declan, we're in this together. I can't let you suffer anymore. If there's a chance to free you, we have to try." Declan sighed, feeling the weight of responsibility. "But what if something goes wrong? What if you get hurt? I couldn't live with myself if something happened to you." She moved closer to him, her eyes shining with the courage he had always admired. "We have to believe it will work. My grandmother was a powerful witch, and I believe this spell is our best chance." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of branches breaking in the distance. Both became alert, but soon realized it was just a passing deer. The tension of the situation seemed to grow with each moment, but Siobhan knew they needed to make a decision quickly. The full moon was near, and with it, the dangers from both the Guardians and Declan's transformation. In the following days, Siobhan immersed herself in intense studies, deciphering every detail of the grimoire. Every symbol and word seemed to resonate with an ancient, almost palpable energy. One night, while Declan watched Siobhan work, he softly asked, "Do you really think it can work?" She looked up from the scrolls, a determined gleam in her eyes. "Yes, Declan. I believe it can. And we're going to do this together. We can't let fear paralyze us." Finally, after days of preparation, the moment arrived. Siobhan and Declan stood in a circle of stones, with the grimoire open before them. Declan held a ceremonial knife, nervous but ready to follow Siobhan's instructions. "Ready?" she asked, trying to hide her own anxiety. He nodded, taking a deep breath. "Let's do this." She began reciting the spell, her voice firm despite the tremor in her heart. Declan made a cut on his palm, letting the blood drip onto the symbols drawn on the ground. The atmosphere around them seemed to vibrate, and a light began to emanate from the circle. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through Siobhan, making her stagger. Declan rushed to hold her, but she gently pushed him away, insisting on continuing. "It's working," she exclaimed, feeling the powerful energy of the spell growing. But then, the pain intensified, and Siobhan fell to her knees, her breathing becoming labored. Declan held her tightly, his heart racing with worry. "Siobhan, please stop. It's not worth losing you." She looked at him, her face pale, but her eyes glowing with fierce determination. "We have to keep going, Declan. We're close." With a final effort, Siobhan recited the last words of the spell. A burst of light enveloped them both, and for a moment, everything was silent. When the light faded, Declan felt a change in his body. The constant pain he had felt, the curse he had carried, seemed to have vanished. He looked at Siobhan, who was lying on the ground, exhausted. "Siobhan, you did it," he said, tears of relief streaming down his face. "You broke the curse." She smiled weakly, her strength almost gone. "I knew we could, together." As Declan held her, he promised himself that he would take care of her, no matter what came next. The sacrifice had been great, but Siobhan's love and determination had prevailed, giving them new hope for the future. As the full moon approached, the tension between Siobhan and Declan grew intensely. Declan, aware that his transformation was imminent, feared the dangers it could pose not only to Siobhan but also to himself and the village. Siobhan, on the other hand, was determined to find a solution before the Guardians of Purity located them. Their frequent discussions reflected the weight of the situation on both of them. On one particularly tense night, Declan opened up, "I don't want to hurt you, Siobhan. Every time the full moon approaches, I feel like I'm losing a little more of myself." Siobhan held his hand firmly, her eyes full of determination. "We're going to find a way out, Declan. I promise." With time running out, Siobhan decided to seek help from other supernatural beings. She knew she couldn't fight the Guardians and protect Declan on her own. In a nearby forest, she found an ancient circle of witches and fairies, led by a powerful witch named Morgana. Siobhan approached cautiously, aware of the danger but also the urgent need for an alliance. Morgana greeted her with an appraising look. "You seek help, human? Why should we trust you?" Siobhan took a deep breath before responding, "I love a werewolf, and we're being hunted by the Guardians of Purity. I know you're also their targets. We need to unite if we want to survive." After a long silence, Morgana slowly nodded. "Very well, Siobhan. We'll form an alliance. But remember, trust must be earned." With this new alliance, Siobhan and Declan felt a slight relief, but they knew it wouldn't be enough to stop the Guardians. On a dark and silent night, as they planned their next steps, a surprise ambush by the Guardians caught them off guard. Declan fought bravely but was captured. Siobhan, desperate, tried to stop them but was knocked out and left unconscious. When she regained consciousness, Siobhan was determined to rescue Declan at any cost. She returned to the forest to seek help from Morgana and the other supernatural beings. Armand, the vampire who had already proven to be a valuable ally, also joined her. Morgana, realizing the gravity of the situation, summoned her circle to devise a rescue plan. We can't just storm the Guardian's base. We need a strategy, Morgana said as she studied a map of the region. Armand, with a grim expression, added, I know some secret passages that could give us an advantage. But we need to be quick and precise. Siobhan, with her heart heavy with worry for Declan, was determined not to fail. We're going to save Declan, no matter what it takes. With the plan set, the group prepared for the rescue mission. The atmosphere was thick with tension and anticipation. As they approached the Guardian's base, every member of the Alliance knew their lives were at risk, but the determination to save Declan and end the Guardian's persecution united them. In the darkness of the night, Siobhan led the group with fierce courage. Every step was calculated, every movement silent. When they finally spotted the Guardian's base, the sight of Declan chained and weakened only strengthened their resolve. The battle that followed was intense and relentless. Siobhan fought with a strength she never knew she had, driven by love and desperation. Morgana and her witches conjured powerful spells, while Armand and other supernatural allies faced the Guardians with unmatched ferocity. Declan's capture had been a heavy blow, but the unlikely alliance of witches, fairies, and a vampire proved to be a powerful force. Finally, after an exhausting fight, Siobhan managed to reach Declan. With tears in her eyes, she broke his chains and freed him. I knew you'd come, Declan whispered, his voice weak but full of gratitude. I would never give up on you, Siobhan replied, helping him to his feet. The battle was not yet won, but with Declan free and by her side, Siobhan felt a new surge of hope. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, determined to protect not only their love but also the freedom of all persecuted supernatural beings. The alliances formed that night showed that, even in the darkest circumstances, unity and love could prevail against hatred and fear. And so, Siobhan and Declan, with their new allies, prepared to face the challenges that were still to come, knowing that their love would be the force that guided them. Siobhan, Armand, and the supernatural allies were ready for the most dangerous mission of their lives. The base of the Guardians of Purity, a secret society dedicated to hunting and exterminating supernatural beings, was heavily guarded. However, the determination to rescue Declan, now captive and in danger, drove each of them forward. Siobhan, the young historian who had fallen in love with Declan, a cursed werewolf, led the group with a courage that came from her love and loyalty. Are we ready? Siobhan asked, her voice firm but with a touch of anxiety. Armand, the vampire who had become an unexpected ally, nodded solemnly. We're bringing Declan back. No matter what it costs, Armand affirmed, his eyes glowing with fierce determination. The raid on the Guardian's base began under the cover of night. The Guardians, though well-trained, were unprepared to face such a diverse alliance of supernatural beings. Fairies, witches, and other mystical creatures attacked with a precision and strength that left the enemies disoriented. Siobhan moved forward with impressive agility, her mind focused on finding Declan. Amid the chaos of the battle, Siobhan found a path to the heart of the base. There, in a cell reinforced with ancient enchantments, was Declan, chained and visibly weakened. Declan, she exclaimed, running toward him. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. Siobhan, you came, Declan whispered, a mix of relief and pain in his voice. As Siobhan freed Declan from the chains, a disturbing secret came to light. The leader of the Guardians, a man who had always remained in the shadows, revealed himself. Uncle Laurent? Siobhan murmured, disbelief in her eyes. You're the leader of the Guardians? Laurent, a man with a stern appearance, looked at her with a cold expression. Yes, Siobhan. And there's a lot you don't know about our family, he said, his voice laden with secrets. Our lineage has always been involved with the supernatural, but in ways you can hardly imagine. The revelation shook Siobhan to her core. The man she had known as her uncle, who had raised her with so much care, was now revealing himself as the enemy. "Why, Uncle? Why haunt us? Why hide this from me?" she asked, her voice choked with emotion. "To protect you, Siobhan. To protect our lineage from being corrupted," Laurent responded, trying to justify his actions. "But now I see I underestimated your strength and determination." The battle around them continued fiercely, but Siobhan knew she had to act quickly. With Declan gravely injured, every second counted. "Declan, let's get out of here," she said, helping him to his feet. But Declan was too weak to walk on his own. "Go, Siobhan. Save yourself," he said, his voice barely audible. "I'm not leaving you," Siobhan declared firmly. "We're getting out of here together, or we die trying." With Armin's help, who arrived just in time to support them, they began to move out of the base. As they retreated, Laurent made one last attempt to stop them. "Siobhan, you don't understand what you're doing," he shouted. "You're putting yourself in danger." "I understand more than you think, Uncle," she replied. "And I know that love and loyalty are more powerful than any curse or prejudice." With these words, Siobhan, Declan, and their supernatural allies managed to escape from the Guardian's base, but not without paying a heavy price. Declan was gravely injured, and time was running out to save his life. Back in the temporary safety of their hideout, Siobhan knew she had one last card to play, the spell from the old grimoire. "I'm going to perform this spell, Declan. Even if it costs me my life," she said, her voice firm but filled with love and sacrifice. Declan, even in his weakened state, tried to dissuade her. "I can't let you sacrifice yourself for me, Siobhan. We'll find another way." "There is no other way," she replied, tears in her eyes. "You are my life now, and I'm not giving up on you." With that, she began to prepare the spell, fully aware of the risks but determined to save the man she loved. The atmosphere in the small French village was thick with tension. Siobhan, with the old grimoire in hand, was ready to perform the spell that could finally free Declan from his curse. The supernatural allies stood around, forming a protective circle, while Armand, the vampire, watched closely. The night was dark, with a full moon shining brightly in the sky, heightening the sense of urgency and imminent danger. "Declan, are you ready?" Siobhan asked, her voice revealing a mix of determination and fear. "I am, Siobhan. Whatever happens, we'll face it together," Declan replied, his gaze full of love and trust. Taking a deep breath, Siobhan began to chant the ancient words of the spell. The grimoire seemed to pulse in her hands, almost as if it were alive. The Latin words flowed from her lips with a mysterious melody, and a powerful energy began to form around them. The air grew thick, and a cool breeze passed through the circle of allies, making Siobhan's hair dance to the rhythm of the spell. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through Siobhan's body. The blood sacrifice required by the spell wasn't just symbolic, it was real and demanded her very life essence. She felt her strength begin to drain away, her legs trembling as she continued to chant the sacred words. "Siobhan, no! Stop now, it's too dangerous!" Declan shouted, trying to reach her, but was held back by the energy barrier created by the spell. I need to keep going." "It's the only way," Siobhan replied, her voice now weak but resolute. She could feel the power of the spell growing, an overwhelming force that threatened to consume her. The transformation began. Declan started to scream in pain, his body writhing as the werewolf curse was torn from him. The fur disappeared, the claws retracted, and his features returned to their human state. However, Siobhan was losing consciousness, her strength fading rapidly. Armand, realizing the gravity of the situation, made a quick and crucial decision. "I won't let her die for this," he muttered to himself. He rushed to Siobhan and, with a decisive gesture, made a small cut on his own wrist, letting his blood drip onto Siobhan's lips. The vampire blood, with its regenerative properties, began to mix with the spell, creating an unexpected reaction. Siobhan felt a new wave of energy surge through her body. She slowly opened her eyes and saw Armand by her side, his expression worried. "Armand, what did you do?" she whispered, feeling life return to her limbs. "I gave part of my life essence to you." "I couldn't let you die," Armand replied with a sad smile. "You're too important to all of us." Declan, now fully human, ran to embrace Siobhan. "You did this for us." "I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice choked with emotion. Siobhan smiled, feeling more alive than ever, despite having been on the brink of death moments before. "We did this together. Now, we have a chance to live our lives the way we always wanted." Armand's unexpected sacrifice revealed a deep friendship and loyalty, changing the course of events irrevocably. The love between Siobhan and Declan was tested and prevailed, but the local community and the Guardians still posed a threat. The battle was far from over, but in that moment, they knew they had enough strength and allies to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Declan, now permanently human, dedicated himself tirelessly to caring for Siobhan, whose recovery was slow and painful. He prepared herbal infusions, fetched fresh water from the nearby river, and spent sleepless nights by her side, waiting for any sign of improvement. Siobhan, though weak, felt strengthened by Declan's love and dedication. On a particularly quiet night, she opened her eyes and found Declan sitting beside her, holding her hand. "You're here," she murmured with a fragile smile. "I would never leave you," Declan replied, gently squeezing her hand. "You saved me, Siobhan. Now it's my turn to take care of you." As the days passed, Siobhan slowly regained her strength, but a shadow hung over them. The Guardians of Purity, though disorganized after recent events, still posed a threat. Declan and Siobhan knew they couldn't live in peace as long as that secret society continued to hunt supernatural beings. On a sunny afternoon, while Siobhan rested in a rocking chair on the porch of the cabin where they were hiding, they began to plan their next steps. "We can't just wait for them to come to us," Siobhan said, determination shining in her eyes. "We need to act." Declan nodded. "But we need a plan. We can't underestimate what they're still capable of." Siobhan thought for a moment before speaking. "We need to confront my uncle. He's the key to all this. If we can expose the secrets he's hiding, maybe we can dismantle the Guardians once and for all." Declan agreed. "But we can't do it alone. We'll need allies, just like we did before." They began sending messages to Armand and other supernatural allies they had made along the way. In no time, a small group gathered at the cabin, each bringing their own skills and knowledge to the mission. Armand, with his experience and strength, was crucial in developing the final plan. The night before the confrontation, Siobhan and Declan shared a moment of intimacy and reflection. "Are you ready for this?" Declan asked, holding Siobhan's face in his hands. "I have to be," she replied firmly. "I can't let more lives be destroyed because of this senseless war." When morning came, the group was prepared. They headed to the Guardians' headquarters, an old castle hidden deep in the forest. When they arrived, Siobhan led the way, with Declan and Armand by her side. As they entered the main hall, they were confronted by her uncle, surrounded by armed guardians. "Siobhan, my dear niece, have you finally decided to join us?" he said with a cold smile. "No, uncle. I'm here to end this," Siobhan responded, her voice steady. Her uncle laughed. "And what exactly do you plan to do? You and your little band of rebels are no match for us." Siobhan stepped forward, staring him down. "I know about our lineage. I know about the secrets you've kept hidden. and I'm here to expose the truth. Her uncle's face twisted in anger. You don't know what you're talking about. I know more than you think, Siobhan retorted. And I have proof. She pulled an old scroll from her pocket and unrolled it. This document proves that our family has always been connected to supernatural beings. My grandmother was a witch, and you knew it. You used that knowledge to manipulate the Guardians to your advantage. The hall fell silent as the Guardians exchanged confused and uncertain glances. Declan and Armand were ready to act but waited for Siobhan's signal. She continued speaking, her voice echoing through the hall. It's time to end this war. Supernatural beings are not our enemies. We can coexist in peace, but that will only happen if the Guardians stop their hunts. Her uncle remained silent for a moment, his expression shifting between anger and surprise. Finally, he raised his hand, signaling for the Guardians to lower their weapons. Maybe you're right, Siobhan, he said with a heavy sigh. Maybe it's time for a new era. Siobhan felt a wave of relief, but knew this was just a small victory. There was still much to be done to ensure peace between humans and supernatural beings. She looked at Declan, who was now by her side, and smiled. Together, they would face any challenge that lay ahead, confident that their love and determination could overcome any obstacle. During the final confrontation, a shocking truth about Siobhan's uncle was devastatingly revealed. As the fight intensified, she realized something was deeply wrong. Her uncle's cold and calculating behavior, which she had always attributed to his role as the leader of the Guardians, now seemed more sinister. Amid the chaos, an unexpected revelation emerged. Her uncle was not a true Guardian, but a supernatural being in disguise, manipulating events for his own dark purposes. As Siobhan approached him, determined to confront him, he laughed darkly. Did you really think you could defeat me, little historian? His voice dripped with disdain and a darkness she had never noticed before. Who are you really? Siobhan demanded, her heart pounding. Why did you do all this? He smiled, a cold, empty smile. I am much older than you can imagine. The Guardians are merely pawns in my game. I manipulated them to eliminate any threat to my power. And you, my niece, are a greater threat than any other supernatural being. At that moment, Declan, still recovering from his wounds, joined her. Siobhan, we won't let him win. She nodded, feeling a renewed surge of determination. Together, we can defeat him. With the help of their allies, including Armand and the supernatural beings who had joined them, Siobhan and Declan fought the imposter. The battle was fierce, but the unity of their forces proved stronger than the enemy had anticipated. Armand, with his vampire strength, struck with precision, while the witches cast powerful spells to weaken the imposter. At a crucial moment, Siobhan used the knowledge from her grandmother's ancient grimoire. I know how to stop him, she shouted to Declan. But I need your help to channel the energy. I'm by your side, always, he replied, gripping her hand firmly. Together, they recited the spell, feeling the magical energy pulse around them. The imposter tried to resist, but the combined power of Siobhan and Declan was overwhelming. With a scream of fury and despair, the imposter's true form was revealed, a malevolent ancient creature that had infiltrated humanity for centuries. Finally, with one last effort, they managed to banish the creature, freeing the village from the threat that had loomed over it for so long. The silence that followed was deep and filled with relief. Siobhan looked at Declan, exhausted but victorious. We did it, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. He pulled her into a tight embrace. I always knew you were special, Siobhan. Together, we're unstoppable. The local community, witnessing the battle and the revelations, began to change their perspective. Fear and prejudice gave way to understanding and acceptance. Supernatural beings, once hunted, were now seen as an integral part of the village. In a surprising and emotional conclusion, an ancient secret was revealed. Siobhan and Declan's true love had been destined to save both humans and supernatural beings. An ancient prophecy, forgotten in time, spoke of a love that would unite the two worlds, bringing peace and harmony. Siobhan and Declan, now reconciled with the community, began to build a new life together. The village, free from fear, thrived with the acceptance and unity of all its inhabitants. And so, their love not only survived the hardships but also became the foundation for a bright and harmonious future for everyone. Good night and enchanted dreams.